The recent fatal shooting of a woman by a United States federal law enforcement officer has become a major national issue, raising questions about the use of force, accountability, and federal policing powers inside the United States. The incident occurred during a federal enforcement operation conducted by U.S. authorities and has since triggered public protests, political responses, and multiple investigations. According to official statements, the shooting took place when federal officers approached a civilian vehicle during an enforcement action. A female occupant of the vehicle was shot and later pronounced dead. Federal authorities initially stated that the officer involved discharged his weapon after perceiving an immediate threat. The Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement stated that the officer acted in self-defense, alleging that the vehicle was being used in a manner that endangered officers at the scene. Local officials and independent observers have challenged the federal account. City authorities stated that preliminary video evidence does not clearly support the claim that the vehicle posed a lethal threat at the time shots were fired. Municipal leadership publicly rejected the initial federal explanation and called for transparency, stating that the use of deadly force appeared disproportionate based on available footage and eyewitness accounts. The woman who was killed was a U.S. citizen. Family members confirmed that she was not the target of an immigration enforcement action. This detail significantly intensified public concern, as it raised questions about operational planning, intelligence accuracy, and civilian risk during federal raids. Civil rights organizations emphasize that citizenship status does not alter the requirement for proportional use of force under U.S. law. Following the incident, protests erupted in multiple locations, particularly in the city where the shooting occurred. Demonstrators called for the release of body camera footage, the identification of the officer involved, and the suspension of the officer pending investigation. Protesters also demanded limits on federal enforcement operations in residential and civilian areas. State authorities announced the launch of an independent investigation to determine whether state criminal laws were violated. At the same time, federal authorities confirmed that the Federal Bureau of Investigation opened a parallel inquiry into potential civil rights violations. The involvement of the FBI indicates that the case is being treated as a serious use of force incident with possible constitutional implications. Legal experts note that federal officers are permitted to use deadly force only when there is an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm. The central legal question in this case is whether the officer's perception of threat was objectively reasonable. Video evidence, vehicle speed, officer positioning, and verbal commands issued prior to the shooting are expected to be key factors in determining legality. The incident has renewed national debate over the scope and conduct of federal law enforcement agencies, particularly immigration-related units operating inside U.S. cities. Critics argue that aggressive enforcement tactics increase the risk of civilian harm and undermine public trust. Supporters of federal agencies argue that officers face unpredictable dangers and must make split-second decisions in high-risk situations. Several members of Congress have called for hearings and briefings on the incident. Lawmakers from both parties requested full disclosure of operational protocols and rules of engagement used during the enforcement action. Some legislators have proposed new restrictions on federal operations conducted without coordination with local law enforcement. Civil rights groups emphasize that the case fits into a broader pattern of disputed use of force incidents involving law enforcement in the United States. They argue that accountability mechanisms are often slow and opaque, contributing to public skepticism. These organizations have urged the Department of Justice to release findings promptly and to pursue charges if evidence supports wrongdoing. The Department of Homeland Security stated that it is cooperating with all investigations and reaffirmed its commitment to officer training and internal review processes. Officials cautioned against drawing conclusions before investigations are completed, stating that premature judgments could compromise legal proceedings. The case remains under active investigation at both state and federal levels. No final determinations regarding criminal liability or policy violations have been announced. The release of body camera footage and forensic analysis results is expected to play a decisive role in shaping public understanding and legal outcomes. This incident continues to influence national discussion on policing standards, federal authority, civilian safety, and the balance between enforcement and constitutional rights in the United States.